Hey there, do you ever want to maybe get some meetings that are way more approachable for your users to join? Let's say you might want to do a training seminar or just an overall company all up or a town hall meeting, and you want to expand this across multiple different days. That way your users can select which exact meeting they want to attend, because maybe they're available on Monday and not Tuesday or Wednesday, as an example. My name is Nick Lee from Pragmatic Works, and I'm here to show you how just we could do that using Power Automate. Now, this is a really awesome tool. If you haven't used Power Automate much before, make sure you check out many of our other YouTube videos, as well as our on-demand learning platform that has tons of Power Automate teachings, many hours of it. But in this case, we're gonna do a demonstration that's a little bit more on the intermediate to advanced side of Power Automate. So if you've never used Power Automate before, just know that we're gonna be going through a lot of steps here today, but I'm not necessarily gonna dive a lot of detail on why or how we're doing things. Again, this is a bit intermediate or advanced in that case. So make sure you check out other content. With that being said, let's jump into it. So for instance, I have a Microsoft form that's already been created. I created it myself just a few minutes ago. That what it does, as you can see on screen, it just gives me a list of dates. And it just says Monday, January 6, 2025, Tuesday, January 7, 2025, and Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm gonna send this form out to my users, and when they choose an option here in this Microsoft form, it is going to automatically put an invite on their calendar according to that meeting that I want them to join. It's going to put them directly in the meeting that is the relevant choice here. So the idea behind that is we're going to also look at my calendar. So here is my calendar that I'm going to pull up on screen now. And in my calendar, I have 3 meetings. They're very simple meetings here that are 30 minutes long in duration at 11 a.m. on Monday, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So these are the correlating meetings to that one that we have before. And if I look inside of them, if I pull this up here, we could see that in the scheduling assistant, there's nobody been added to this. It's just me in here, right? So the goal is when someone goes to this form and chooses a date, it's gonna automatically add them to it. So that's the idea, that's the goal. So we're gonna start off by going to make.powerautomate.com. This is where we always go to start building our flows. So I'm gonna go into create, and I'm gonna create one. Create a new flow, and what I want to create is a new automated cloud flow. So something that's going to be automatic whenever this form gets utilized here. So when I choose that, there's a many different triggers that are available, and just coincidentally speaking, the very upmost one on my screen is the one we want, but I'm going to search anyways. When a new response is submitted from Microsoft Forms, this is the one that we want. So I'm going to click that and hit create. And now is the start of our Power Automate flow that we have going on here. So when a new response is submitted, so if I select this item, I could pick a form, and the one I want is this one here that's called Form for Meeting Invitations. So I'm going to choose Form for Meeting Invitations. So that looks good. I'm happy with that so far. Now that I've gotten the form for the meeting invitation, I just need to get the contents out of it. To get the contents out of it, I just need to add a new step here in our flow. And the action we're gonna add is get response details. So we're gonna get the details from said response. So we're gonna choose the form for meeting invitations, the one I already have created. And I just need to get the response ID, which is basically saying what is the actual ID value of this response. And if I can hit dynamic content, I can actually, by hitting the little lightning bolt, if I hit dynamic content there, I get the available options. And the only option I get is response ID coming from the previous step, which is perfect. All right, so next step along the way is we are going to now look up who selected it. So, all right, so now I've gotten the ID, I've gotten the response. Now I just need to figure out, well, what exactly, who are we sending this to? Who are we sending this calendar invite to? You know, what's their name, what's their email, etc. We got to get all that information. So the action we're going to be adding here is get user profile. And this is from the connector that is Group Office 365 users because they're going to be signed in on the form. So that's what we want to grab. So get user profile. And the profile that we're going to look up. So if we search here, we just want the responder's email in the dynamic content. And perfect. We got the responder's email now. That's exactly what we needed. All right, and then the next step that we're gonna do here is we got the response details, then after the user profile, then we need to do what's called initializing a variable. So we need to create a variable. And the reason why we're creating a variable here in this case is because this list of users is going to change, right? Because we have one user that is part of any given meeting, and then another user gets added, and then another user gets added, and then another user gets added every time someone selects an option from the form. So we need to create a variable that is going to be able to capture this multiple selections. So let's go ahead and hit add an action. Let's initialize a variable right here. And I'm just gonna call this variable var attendee. I think that makes sense. And then the type here, we need to change the type to an array. And the reason why we need to make it an array is because obviously this list of people that's a part of this is gonna change. So it needs to be an array. That looks good. So now we have all this created. Now we need to actually start defining which meeting someone's gonna get an invite to. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start using some conditional logic here. So if I hit the plus sign, add an action, and if I wanted to start doing some conditional logic, I could just use this action called a condition. So if I hit condition, and I need to choose a value, well, the value is actually going to be the value from the body, right? It's gonna be value from the body. So if we look up the dynamic content and find the body of the response right here, that'll do it. Not quite. So this is a tentative placeholder we have to include for now. I'll show you guys in just a minute. But the body of this actually has a lot of different content in it. So we kind of want to isolate the individual selections to see, well, there's a lot of different pieces that are a part of a body. So we want to be able to isolate the selection or the attribute that is what their response was. So we're going to come back to this in a moment and modify it. But for the sake of example here, the body is good for now. And we're going to choose this drop down to where it contains, we're going to choose it where it contains January 6th, right? I think technically speaking, the form says what? Monday, January 6th, 2025. But if we put January 6th, that's good enough because it is a contains, which just means it has to be part of it. So I'm happy with that. So that looks good. So that's our conditional logic. So if that step is true, then what? All right, well, now we need to start adding some steps. So first we need to look up the events, all of the events that exist in, my calendar technically, but get events. So we need to try to find those events, and it is looking up my specific calendar because I'm the one that's signed in. And if I just go to the one that's called calendar here, this is just my regular old calendar. I don't have it named anything special. And then in my calendar, now I just need to look up the actual meeting that's called meeting, meeting January 6th. So what I need to do is set up a filter specifically for that one meeting. And now this does use an OData filter, and OData filters are a little weird if you're not used to writing Power Automate, but basically I need to look up where the subject of this meeting is meeting January 6th. So if I do a subject equals meeting January 6th. There we go. Because I believe, let's double check it, that is the actual name of this meeting. Meeting January 6th. All right, so that looks good. That's confirmed. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with how that looks so far. And then we need to essentially send a HTTP request to gather all the available attendees that are a part of it right now. So this part is a little bit tricky. First, we need to look up what this actual event value is, what the URI is of it, and we don't have that capability yet. So we're gonna actually do a lookup based off of this actual get event value. So if I hit save, there we go, and I hit test, I want to do a manual test. Now I just want to go into my form and make an option. So I want to choose the option for January 6th because this is the one we're currently working with. And if I hit submit, go back into my flow ran successfully up to this point. Oh, look, it didn't like something. The condition ran as true, but the get events didn't work right here. Let me see what's going on with that. It was skipped. All right, so this is currently not working as it is right now, right? Because get events is being skipped. But remember, we're not actually grabbing that attribute value of the body we're specifically looking for. So we actually need to get that real quick. So if we actually go up to get response details and go down to the outputs area, you see this value right here, RB22, blah, 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 blah. It's saying that this is the actual output value of the body of that specific attribute where it says Monday, January 6, 2025. And so this is the one that we want to modify. Or this is the one we want to look up rather in our condition. So if I copy this value of RB22, so on and so forth, go into the condition, hit edit. Now I need to essentially append to this body that value. And to do so, I am going to select insert expression. The first thing I want to do is get the body from our get response details. And I want to add to that this question mark, open bracket, single quote, this value. This is actually how I isolate this exact attribute value, which is by doing the question mark, open bracket, single quote, etc. All right, now if I hit add, it says this body function here. That looks good. I'm happy with how it looks so far. And by the way, this body function is going to work for all 3 dates, this little value that we just grabbed, because it's just the attribute of whatever the answer is we're looking for. So that looks good. All right, so now that we have this saved with a new body attribute output set up, I'm going to hit test again, automatic test with the recent trigger, hit test. Now it should pull up that actual event information we're looking for. There we go. You see get events before actually as a check mark this time because we gave it that body value we were looking for. So now if I look at the get event details and scroll down to the outputs, and if I look at the body section of the output, it's actually going to give me a lot of information here. So if I actually copy this output and put it in a notepad, this is a good idea. It's a lot easier to see things. So this is the contents of it right here. So essentially this ID value that it's generating, this ID is exactly what we're looking for. All right, so this is the content that we need. So I can actually use this value. So I'm just actually gonna copy this value. All right, and I'm actually gonna add another notepad page here, and I'm just gonna mark it for myself so I remember. So the January 6th meeting is the ID. So I'm gonna paste it right there so I can save it. All right, perfect. So now that I have that, now I'm down to start creating the next step. So the next step for this is add an action, and it's going to be send an HTTP request. Send an HTTP request. Perfect. So now the URL of this one is a little bit interesting or intriguing rather. So what I could do is actually could start off by putting this URL here of graph.microsoft.com v1 me events. This is basically how you access calendar content. This is the actual URL address of calendar content. So if you put that first, and then we add in the meeting ID from January 6th that we have copied and I put in my notepad, paste. And then I just need to essentially make sure I isolate the attendees value out of here because that's what I'm going to be requesting to get and add to. So if I put equals, because that's just part of this, equals question mark select equals attendees. This is how I get an isolated value for all of the attendees for this meeting that currently exists. That looks good. I'm pretty happy with how that looks so far. All right, so now we can go to our next step. We've gotten the list of attendees. Now we need to set a variable item This way, those attendees can be captured. And I'm gonna set the var attendee variable with the value of attendees from this HTTP request. Well, how am I gonna do that? Well, first I need the body of the HTTP request, so I'm gonna grab it. But again, I need to isolate the actual attendees value, kind of like what we did before. So I'm going to actually go to insert a function. The first thing I'm going to do is grab the body, which is from the HTTP request. And then I'm going to add in the attendees attribute from the sent an HTTP request. Hit add, perfect. So now I've set the variable. And the next thing I need to do is append an item to this variable. So I'm going to append to array variable to the var attendee. And what I'm actually going to append are values that are from the get user or get request from before, which is the username and the email. But to do that, there's actually a block of code that's required. I'm trying to grab it over here on this other monitor. There we go. So I'm going to include this in the notes in the description below. But basically, we need this kind of block of code to append to the existing calendar invite or the calendar meeting itself. And we just need to add a couple of values in this name and address section. So I need to insert dynamic content. So if I search name, actually I believe it's called display name. Yes, display name from get user profile. And then the address is the mail address. So if I search for mail, there's a mail address from get user profile. That's what it's called there. Now that I have this dynamic content added like that, it's going to be perfect. So now I'm appending to this array. And the very last step I need to do is update the HTTP request that we did before, right? So I can essentially copy this. So if I copy this action and then paste it, I'll call this patch instead of copy at the top. So I am going to patch it instead of get because we've already gotten it. So now I'm going to patch it. And one thing I need to do here is I need to add one more parameter. So to the body, I need to add one variable to this. So if I go and select the attendees attribute from this meeting, now I just need to append in our var attendees variable. So how we do that is if I go here, dynamic content, var attendee, add, perfect. Now I just need to put a closed curly bracket at the end of it. That looks good. And then it's done, right? So now if someone requests this exact Monday, it's gonna work. So now I just need that I have all this set up for Monday, I need to do the same for Tuesday and Wednesday, the 7th and 8th, and we're essentially done. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this whole condition action because this condition is for January 6th. Now I just need to make one for January 7th. So if I paste an action here, this one is, let's rename this one. This will be condition Jan 6. The second one will be condition Jan 7. All right, now I'm on condition Jan 7. I need to change this to contains January 7th. Looks good. Now I need to find the event for January 7th. So where the subject is that, there we go, save. Now that's all set up. We have this set up, I'll double check it, meeting January 7th. So I need to run a test to return January 7th. So I'm gonna choose January 7th from my form. So it sees so I can see what it says. Flow is running. Aha, down here, January 7th. This is the one. I need to grab that event information like we did before. So I am going to go to the bodies of the output. And remember that value that's called ID? We're looking for that ID value in here. Right here, this is the one. So I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna open my handy dandy notepad. Write January 7th meeting. So I have it there. Notice it is ever so slightly different. The fourth character from the end is the one that looks like it's different. It's a W instead of a Y. And that is a notable change. It is a notable change. And there could be more differences. I just don't see it with my naked eye. But regardless, I'm gonna grab this value now and update this send an HTTP request. Oh, I need to go to edit again. Send an HTTP request. Paste this new value in there for that, as well as this other send an HTTP request. Paste the new value in for that one. And January 7th should be done. All right, so now I just need to make one more condition for January 8th, and we should be finished. So this one will be called condition January 8th, where it contains January 8th, and then the subject of the meeting calendar invite is January 8th. So I'm gonna save it. Looks good. Now I need to run a test, a manual test, based on a form selection of January 8th. Submit. Check my flow. So 6 skipped, 7 skipped, and 8th is not skipped. So looks good. So I'm gonna go to my get event details, go to outputs, the body of the output, look for the ID. Here it is. Copy this one, open my handy dandy notepad. This one is gonna be January 8th meeting. Notice this one has an X, YWX. All right, interesting to see, but I'm gonna make sure I have this one copied. And then I need to modify HTTP request 2 over here. Oh, gotta go to edit first. HTTP request 2, paste. HTTP request 2, paste. Save. And this should be done. This should be working, hypothetically speaking, if I invite a new user. So let's just do that. Let's test it out. So what I have pulled up here, let me pull up on this screen, is I have, I'm logged in incognito to a test account. So as you can see here, this is an account on the top right. It says PW Demo. It's a Pragmatic Works demo account for purposes just such as this. And if I look at my calendar for January, notice that there's nothing on it, right? So I essentially want to invite myself on this one to this exact one of these meetings, right? So what I could do is I could go to collect responses from my initial form, collect responses, copy the link, go there on this account that I'm signed in, paste. So this is, I'm signed into that Pragmatic Works demo account here in my incognito window. And if I choose Monday, January 6th and hit submit, let's see what happens. And there it is, it just popped in. Look at that, it worked out perfect, right? So now I could come in here and also submit another response if I wanted to do. Let's pull in Wednesday, January 8th. Why not? Hit submit. Give this a moment. And it should just pop in just like that. All right, gorgeous, excellent. Now you see I just invited myself to meetings on this demo account as if I was a new user, and it's working out perfectly. So again, guys, this was a more intermediate advanced. We had to do a lot of little intricate steps to get this working exactly as intended, but in the end, it is doing exactly what we want. It's sending invites to these specific meetings on a user based on a form field selection. It is working fantastically. If you want to know more about any of our Power Automate trainings or anything like that, make sure you reach out. Check out our website. We have all kinds of hours, so many hours with the Power Automate content that exists, as well as many other tools as well. A ton of Microsoft products, you know, Power BI, SQL, Excel, Teams, whatever you can think of. We have all kinds of content available. With all that being said, guys, down below in the comments, let me know, can you think of any other cool use cases for doing a flow like this? I think it's really awesome functionality to be able to do. You know, when it comes to tools like Power Automate, your own creativity and your own use cases are, you know, going to be different compared to everyone else. So what type of similar functionality would you use Power Automate for in your environment? Make sure you let me know. And again, my name is Nick Lee, and it's been a pleasure.